So, Lev, welcome to Intrepid Explorers in King's College London. Thanks for coming along. We were just thinking, like, just right out from the start, what is it? It's something like 7 countries, 4,250 miles?
Yep.
Over 12 months?
More or less, hopefully around that, yes. Yep.
So how on earth do you go about planning that type of expedition?
Well, basically, it's been over 2 years in the planning now. Some of the biggest challenges, really, of an expedition like this is sort of the basics of getting the funding in, making sure you're prepared in terms of visas, bureaucracy, and all of the sort of in-country logistics as well. So making sure you've got the right guides, making sure that you make as many contacts in country as possible, whether that's sort of local journalists or the authorities, and that's really important.
As you're walking along, you also want to sort of raise some of the socio-political issues and post-conflict issues. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, well, the Nile's a fascinating river. It's been the lifeblood of Eastern Africa for several thousand years, really. And what's really interesting is the fact that it's so diverse in terms of not just the sort of scenery and the landscape and the environment, but also the cultures and the people that live along this river.
We're just wondering, what are you most looking forward to?
Apart from finishing, or
apart from finishing, because you're going to be away for a year,
Sure.
so you're going to many different countries. I mean,
Yeah.
Is there one place you're most looking forward to getting to?
Well, actually, in 2 weeks' time, going out and finding the source of the Nile, really, because that's always been a dream of mine, to actually go and see the source of the Nile. So that's going to be a real highlight, I think. But the great thing is I'm going to be seeing so many exciting and interesting things along the way that hopefully I think it's going to be pretty exciting everywhere.
And I hear the Sud Swamps might be a little bit tricky. What's your plan of action there?
Yeah, I mean, the Sud Swamp is, that was always going to be the biggest sort of challenge. That was what defeated all of the big expeditions in the past. It's what defeated the sort of the Roman legions that were sent down to try and find the source of the Nile. It's the world's biggest swamp that in the rainy season expands to about the size of England. And my plan is to try and get through it before the rains start, because if I get stuck in the swamps when the rains start, then it's all going to be over. So this is why I'm setting off now. This is really the last sort of safe moment to get through Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda and South Sudan before the rainy season starts, which will be in May. Basically, what I'm really interested in is sort of get some of your tips for the journey I'm about to undertake. Obviously, I'm going to be spending quite a lot of time in the Sahara, or at least the Eastern Sahara, along the way. And do you have any sort of tips for me along, as I travel along the Nile across the Nubian and Bayuda Desert, really?
There's two issues there, isn't it? The Nile, it actually has quite a lot of diseases, of waterborne diseases, such as malaria.
Yes, I mean, malaria is always going to be a problematic, but I'm taking prophylactics for that, and staying away from sort of stagnant water and things like that. Yeah.
How do you do that when you're going through the Sud?
Well, the Sud is going to be grim, and I think that's a bridge I'm going to have to cross when I come to it. I've been out to the Sud a couple of times, and I've seen just how gruesome it can be. In terms of stale water, you're right, it's going to be difficult, because obviously I need to go down to the water to get water to drink and to wash and things like that. So I think that's all part of the expedition, is to find out how I'm going to sort of survive in that sort of environment.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Then, because the other issue is the desert. And,
should I sort of walk in at night and sleep in the day? But can you actually sleep at 50-degree heat? I mean, it's difficult, isn't it?
But it's best to probably get up just before sunrise, walk until the heat of the day, rest. And then go again in the evening and
do a couple of stints.
So doing a couple of stints, that's usually what we do when we're down there in that time of year.
The landscape is obviously going to be incredible along the way, and it's very varied, but particularly around the sort of desert. I mean, what's the sort of genesis behind how it looks?
Well, it didn't really look like that 5,000 years ago. 5 to 10,000 years ago, it was a savanna type environment with typical savanna animals running around the place. And it's only in the last 5,000 years or so that it's actually dried up and begun to look like it does.
Yeah.
But the Nile's still flowing through it, so along the Nile you're going to have lots of oases and date palms and things like that. But if you get away from the Nile, then that's where it gets tricky, and you're going to come across the sand dunes, which are actually very hard to walk through. Aren't they? One step up, half a step down again, going up the dune. It's quite good going down them. So they're just a vestige from the dried up Sahara. All the sand is mostly derived from the Nile itself. When it dries up, it blows out of the riverbed. But actually, we think that deserts are mostly sand. Maybe the Sahara is 25% sand, and it's a good 30% just flat, boring gravel plains.
Yeah.
And presumably you're going to be encountering those.
There will be, especially in Sudan, and that's all quite volcanic actually, on sort of Bayuda and places like that. And I guess my last question: what do you think? What's the biggest thing, or the biggest danger that you think I will come across along the way? Is it going to be malaria? Is it going to be the heat? Or what would you be most concerned about?
Well, the time of year you're doing it, it's the heat.
Yeah.
It could really sap you, and it could get up to 52 to 55 degrees. I've even heard reports of one person I met in the Western Sahara who said once it got up to 60, and they just kind of just lay in bed all day and pour water over themselves, just trying to keep themselves cool. So hopefully you won't get anything like
Fingers
that.
crossed,
You're going to get over 50, and I think that sort of, if it gets like that, you're just going to have to stop, aren't you?
Yeah.
How on earth do you go about mentally preparing for this kind? You're going to be pretty much on your own, walking along the Nile, meeting people as you're going along, but you're not with a whole sort of team of people with you constantly, are you? So.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the Nile actually is that, for certain parts it is quite well inhabited. So I'll be sort of travelling from village to village, and certainly for the first few months, I'll never actually be more than about a week away from a village. But then you're right, there are stretches, particularly in the Sud Swamp in South Sudan, and also around Lake Nasser, when it's going to be probably 6, maybe even 7, 8 weeks at a time where I'm not really going to see any other people. So, it's, in terms of mental preparation, I think you've just got to really focus on the positives and what you're sort of there to do, which is for me that's about, well, a few things, is doing this really big epic expedition, raising awareness and funds as well for a few charities that I'm partnered with, and just sort of treating it as what it is. It's a real privilege to go to some very interesting countries and see some places that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to go and see.